Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I'm A. Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Amy Lang. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to chat with you about my favorite topic.
Absolutely. Why don't you just start us off by just telling me a little bit about yourself?
So I have been a sexuality educator for over 30 years, which blows my mind a little bit. And I started out working with just, teenagers and young adults doing the usual stuff in terms of sex education. And then when I had a kid, I thought that I was going to be just absolutely amazing at talking with him, and I was not. I freaked out. I thought he was going to tell me it felt good to touch his penis, and I just had a little tiny panic attack because I did
Mhm.
not know what to do with that. And I realized that I was much more comfortable talking to a 15-year-old about their pregnancy than my 5-year-old about his penis. So that made me think, oh, I got to figure this out. So I just worked on figuring it out for our family. And then as I was doing that, I realized I could help other parents. I have a master's degree and my focus was in adult education. So I just combined my two favorite things, talking about sex and working with adults. And that was almost 20 years ago. And it's been just an incredible journey for me. And I love helping children, which is what I'm really doing. That's my
Mhm.
motivation. But I need adults and parents to get at the kids. So
Yeah,
my son was 6 when I started, and he was, as you can imagine, completely mortified by my work,
right.
because that's what your job is when your mom's a sex educator. And so I was working, with just general parents, like kind of everybody. And
Sure.
in the last few years, when I would do an individual consultation, parents would just drop in, oh, my kid's autistic, oh, my kid's neurodivergent. And I was like, okay, I got to find you some resources. And as you probably know, sweet listeners, and you, Aaron, there's nothing.
Mhm.
There are no resources for parents of neurodivergent kids, especially from the ages of like preschool into like middle school. And so I was like, all right, y'all need help. And, I'm not neurodivergent. My kiddo's not neurodivergent. My spouse
Right.
is dyslexic. So, but we did not know that was a neurodivergence,
Mhm.
which, and so it
Right.
explains a lot of things about him, which has been
Yeah.
great. Instead of like, you were just annoying on purpose. No. Um, and then, and so I just did a bunch of research and I got certified in neurodivergence and sexuality and have done focus groups and working with parents to give you what you need to communicate with your kids about sexuality. So that's how I ended up here. And it's been so, speaking of inclusion, my eyeballs have been so opened to where I was missing out in
Mhm.
and a variety of levels, but in particular working with neurodivergent people. So yeah, so that's my tale.
Can you maybe explain? I mean, I think I have an idea what you mean when you say you're like a sex educator. Can you maybe explain what that means?
Yeah.
My mind goes to middle school or high school when I had to take health class. So, I mean, is that what it is, or what is it exactly?
Kind of.
Okay.
So, like sexuality educators do a variety of things, and so
Okay.
yeah, there's the sex educators in high school and elementary school that like the teachers that teach sex ed class. There are lots of folks that teach. Sexuality education to adults about like how to have a healthy sex life, how to feel good about
Mm.
yourself as a sexual
Okay.
person, that kind of thing. Um, but what I do specifically is I basically teach parents how to communicate and talk with their children about sexuality, love, and relationships. So my focus is on helping everybody learn like when to start the conversation, what's age appropriate, how do you talk about stuff, communication styles, especially with neurodivergent people, like talking isn't the thing, right? It's
Hmm.
communication, right? There's lots of different ways. And just helping parents feel more comfortable having these conversations, feel more comfortable diving fitting in and supporting their kids. So, it's anything from like, I know all the things, right? Like I know all about how to teach about, everything from abortion to,
Hmm.
LGBTQ stuff to different ways to have sex, like talking about pleasure, family structure, that kind of thing. But in the world of sex education, there are so many people doing so many different things. But this is my little track.
Gotcha. Sure.
And then I do sexual abuse prevention as well. But this is, that's part of the picture. And anyway, I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
What is your definition of inclusion?
I love this question because I've always thought I was inclusive, and I hadn't really like put a finger on like a lens on it really clearly. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, what does that mean? And it's probably pretty similar to what other folks say, is that I really want everybody to feel like they are seen and heard and appreciated for who they
Mhm.
are, and welcomed into my world. And with my work, there's a lot of value stuff that comes on up, and discomfort, and
Mhm.
fear. And so my world is tender, I think, for lack of a better way to describe it. And then so many people don't know. Right? I mean, I'm guessing you
Right.
probably did not have fantastic sex ed as a child. And so that, like really thinking about that in a more, just sort of in a more specific way. But then the other thing that's happened to me as I've been doing this work with neurodivergent families is that, like I said, like I didn't know, like I missed stuff. And in my own family, I have a neurodivergent person.
Mhm.
And so it's actually been really helpful with him. I'm much more patient with the must have only cotton and wool fabrics because I get it now. Um, and so I think that just for me, like taking a minute and thinking through, is what I'm talking about going to work for everybody, right? Is how I'm
Right.
talking about it going to work for everybody, or communicating. So yeah, thank you for that. It was a really good little like, okay, Amy, get your poop in a group here moment.
Yeah. No, I love that. You were just talking about like referring to like what I was taught when I was a kid. So a little bit of my background. I grew up Baptist, so we couldn't even play cards. So talking about sex or
Oh,
anything to do with sex, we didn't talk about. So all my parents were okay with this, but all I recall about my sex education from them was they bought a book about sex. I don't remember anything. They handed me the book. I read it, and then I said, like, do you have questions or something? Which I didn't have questions, and
right.
that's all I can remember. So that I believe is what
Yeah.
my parents, the extent of the conversation we had about it. So
Well, better than nothing, right?
that's
Better
good.
than nothing. And I grew up in a very different, world. Like my parents were really liberal. Same
Okay.
thing. Gave me books, my brother and I books. I've known since I was a little kid. And I think they said, if you have any questions, I don't
Okay.
remember, but we never talked. I only
Yeah.
had books. So I knew it
Yeah.
was coming, and I knew it was happening, and I knew what it
Yeah.
was, but there was no real
Right.
communication. So you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not
Y-
alone.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised by that. The other part is, like I said, I grew up Baptist. A lot of I mean, that's the heterosexual relationships were okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else wasn't. So I had that background, and then 2018, I started working in a residential facility for adolescents. Worked on the oldest girls' dorm, there was individuals there who were transitioning or
Mm-hmm.
identified as transgender and all that stuff. So I mean, it was like, okay, this is. I mean, and then so having that background, having to think about it differently and make they're
Yeah.
human. I mean, I call myself the inclusive dad. I can't be inclusive for disabilities and
Yeah,
you
right.
know other stuff. So rethinking things and processing that, and then just for somebody, the pronoun thing. I never had come across the
Right.
different pronouns before
Right.
that. So I'm like, hey, I respect what you're doing.
Yeah.
I will try to call you the pronouns you prefer,
Right.
but if I mess up, I'm not doing this on purpose. Like this is new to me, so just give me some grace. And most of them were fine with that.
Yeah.
So that was 2018. So that's not that long ago. So most
Yeah.
of my life, I didn't have any exposure to any of that kind of stuff. So just to learning that in me, and for me, open. I like to talk to people and
Yeah.
get to know them on a personal level. And I mean, that stuff to me is, it's not who I am, but I mean, if that's what, you are, with who you are, I'm not going to, look down on you. So that's,
Yeah.
that part of it. So yeah, it
Yeah,
was
a lot of
been
that
interesting.
was new to lots and lots of people. And
Yep.
then I
Yep.
think, as you probably know, that neurodivergent people, I think, are 2 to 3 times more likely to be queer.
Okay.
So it's just a really, so for
Interesting.
parents, like my advice is just assume they're not heterosexual, they're not
Right.
cisgender. Just use the inclusive language at the
Yep.
get-go, because neurodivergent kids suicide rate is higher than neurotypical kids, and then when we layer on LGBTQ plus, it's higher again. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that nobody wants that for their child, and the number one thing that keeps those kids on par with their peers, their straight and neurotypical peers, is parental support. And it's already a big ask, right, for lots of families. Like, okay, my kid's autistic, I'm functioning. Great. Now they're telling me they're non-binary, which means they don't have it. They don't identify with a gender. Okay,
Right.
great. And now they've changed their pronouns. Okay. And they've changed their
Right.
name, right?
Yeah.
So just I think being ready for that is really important. And, we're always evolving and changing. Like, it's just part of human nature. And our sexuality involves and
Right.
changes, as we learn more about ourselves, as we're out in the world more, with kids these days have so much more information than we ever did.
Right.
Like, teenagers are like, why are you freaking out because somebody's like changed their pronouns? You're
Right.
like, because that's not how it's not a thing.
Right.
It's happening.
Well, yeah, and I mean, with my background growing up, how I did, I mean, it
Yeah.
was viewed like, if you weren't heterosexual, it was viewed as obviously bad, and a
Yeah.
lot of stuff attached to it. So then trying to like,
Let,
I mean, there's still stuff that I'm sitting, I go, here's something, and thoughts from back what I heard over and over as a kid pop up, and that's 40 years later. It's just, it's in
yeah.
there. So trying to like recognize it and like, where's it coming from? Is it
Yeah.
real? That kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
No, definitely. I mean, we all have that, right? In any
Yep.
number of ways. And the thing is, like, when you catch it, you're like, oh, look at that thing. All right, that's not who I am. That's not what I
Yep.
believe. But
Yep.
get out of my head, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
thought I was done with this, right?
Yeah.
Surprise, you're not. Surprise, you're not.
I mean, so do you have, I don't know, maybe you want to talk about some tips, or what have you learned when
Yeah.
you started to research, like how do you share this with neurodiverse
Y-
children
Yeah,
and stuff?
yeah, thank you. So I think one of the things, like one of the biggest things I've realized, and again, like this has been a process for me, right? Like all my
Yeah.
judgment and assumption and all the crap I've believed about neurodivergence and neurodivergent people. I think the biggest myth, and I'm speaking to the choir here, is that neurodivergent people aren't interested in sex or relationships. That they are either hyposexual, which means they aren't interested at all, so they're
Hmm.
asexual, or they are hypersexual, and are aggressive and that kind of thing. And the hypersexual thing comes because from folks who are, oftentimes autistic or ADHDers, and they're impulsive, so they'll say stuff,
Hmm.
right? You got a 15-year-old that just blurts out nice boobs. That doesn't
Right.
mean he doesn't intend harm, right?
Right.
He just sees the boobs and he's 15 and filter free, right?
Hmm.
And then the hyposexual piece comes because I think people, or for what I understand, is that people see autistic and neurodivergent kids as not as children, right? They're sort of stuck as a child. Now it
Right.
depends on support needs and all that, but like they're kind of stuck in childhood. And so what happens is, it's like, well, why would they need sexuality education? Why
Hmm.
would they need anything beyond consent education? Because of course your kids are vulnerable two ways, right? To making unintended incidents and then also being taken advantage of. Both are true. Both are true. And consent education is hugely important, but it
Hmm.
can't just be that, because people, I mean, we just need to assume they're just like any other human being, have desires, are going to want to
Yep.
have partners, are going to, their bodies are going to grow and change. They're going to be interested. They're going to have crushes. And if you come from this space of like, okay, you need all this information because I want you to be ready for whatever this looks like for you.
Right.
And that's the job of sex educating kids, is to prepare them, right? This is one of the biggest things we do in life, and one of the most confusing. as you may
Right.
recall or know or currently experience, right? I've been
Yeah.
married to the same person for an eon, and I'm still like, what is happening? Right? You think I'd have it figured out. I do not.
Right.
So that's my first tip is just assume your kid needs this information. Assume
Right.
they want it. Assume they're gonna, I mean, I know you want your child to have a full life. And so you need to add this in because I believe that every child has a human right to this information. And
Yeah.
every study everywhere shows that parents have the most power and influence over their kids' sexual decision making, their sexual behavior, their sexual development. So no pressure, but that's one of
Yeah.
the things that I think is really important, that parents of neurodivergent kids just really embrace this, because the other thing that people don't understand is that when children have lots of information about their bodies and boundaries and sex and sexuality, they're actually safer from being taken advantage of. Predators look for kids who are clueless. They don't want
Mhm.
your child. They don't want you talking to your kid because it makes it a lot easier if they're like, "Hey, this is a game we play." Just as, like uncles and nieces play this game all the time.
Mhm.
When you've said, "Hey, this is something that is not for kids," you have conversations about that
Yeah.
it's for later in life, right? That kind of thing. It's protective. And again, study after study after study
Mhm.
shows this. And it's not perfect, but
Right.
it helps, and anything to help, right?
Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you. What I mean, what age do you suggest parents start talking about sex with their kids?
All right, everybody needs to take a breath. Because we all have it involves the number five.
Okay.
We all have fifth grade in our heads, right? Because that's when most sex education happens in schools. And so fifth grade is too late, especially now. And so the ideal time to get the, how babies are made conversation out of the way or launched is when they're about 5. Um, which is young, I know, but let
Mhm.
me explain. Um, so 5-year-olds are super curious. They're really open.
Right.
They believe everything that comes out of our mouths. Um, and they're starting kindergarten and they're hearing things from older kids. And so this is the perfect time because they don't know what we know about sex. So if you say the
Right.
penis goes in the vagina, this is the usual way a baby's made. Um, and then you say, this is how you make butter. It's the same. They don't know. Like we know
Right.
about the baby making thing, right? Like we're like, ah.
Right.
And so if that sounds really young, it is, sure, but it's safer for your kid and it establishes that you talk about this in your family. This is like a normal part of our family conversation. As they get older, they're not going to like it. Do we care? We do not, because it's
Right.
about their health and safety.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing too is that my parents over the years have told me how surprised they are so let me just tell you my own story, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk my talk, right? And so I had a book. I was reading it with Milo. He was 5. He was 5. And I'm reading along and we get to the penis goes in the vagina part and I skip it because I'm like, right? And then I was like, we're done. And he's like, he hops off my lap and he's like, okay, mama. And he goes back to playing like Legos or something. And then I'm
Mhm.
sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, you big chicken. So the next day I read it. I read all the words, and I was a little
Right.
sweaty upper lip. And he went, okay, mama. And that was it. And so and again, this also just says like, hey, we talk about this, we're open about this, and you
Mhm.
don't want your kid getting that information from another kid
Right.
because it's not going to necessarily, it might be accurate, right? It could be,
Yeah.
and it, could not be. So that's the like, get that out of the way. But all the time we're talking about body boundaries and consent, especially, I mean, with all kids, but a little more emphasis for neurodivergent kids because they
Sure.
are more vulnerable. That black and white thinking can be confusing. I actually don't recommend you use the word consent because it's confusing. Like adults don't get it, right?
Right.
So saying agreement, saying everybody says yes, using words like that. Sometimes people talk about a space bubble, which that requires some, like drawing a space bubble,
Mhm.
showing a space bubble is going to work better. And then I'm a big fan of role play, like practicing saying no, practicing saying yes, that kind of thing. Um, so that's the kind of let's get this over with, right? It's so nice to have it over with, right? Because those three little words, penis enters vagina, just freaks everybody out.
Right.
But that's us. That's all on us. And a whole lot of this is about us, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's all about us. Like, it's not about our kids. They don't know, right?
Yeah.
They don't know.
Well, as you're talking about that, like you skipped over the penis enters the vagina conversation. Like I'm not. So, do you suggest that you talk about the other? I mean, that's
Right.
one
It's
way
not the
people have sex.
only.
Yeah. So, do you suggest parents like since you're talking about that way to have sex? Do you talk about all the types of
Eventually.
stuff? Okay. Okay.
Eventually. So, when you're starting these conversations out, it's easiest to start with reproduction and biology, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then, but all the time you're saying this feels good to their grown-up bodies. And everybody agrees to do this. And you can also say things like, you don't ever have to do this. Some people never do this,
Mhm.
but lots of people have feelings, romantic feelings, sexual feelings. It's a normal part of being human. And then as they get older, you are going to need to talk about, like, hey, you know what? And you can even say to a 5-year-old, and most of the time people do this because it feels good. They
Mhm.
don't want to make a baby. And so you've just established like pleasure and
Sure.
consent, right? And all that. By the time they are 10-ish, which sounds young again, they do need to know different ways of having sex. They need to know, about the different ways of having sex. Because they're going to hear it. And that's
Right.
thanks to porn, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's thanks to porn. They're hearing all kinds of stuff. So you want to get in ahead of it. And yeah, it's awkward and it's uncomfortable and it's weird. And I know you can't imagine talking to your 10-year-old about 69, but they're talking about
Right.
it. It's
Yeah.
awful. Makes me crazy. Makes me crazy. So, also we just talk about puberty for a minute. Puberty can be really hard on neurodivergent kids because of their, different sensitivities and how they might be uncomfortable just with change
Mhm.
or feeling out of control and like not being able to control their bodies, like having random acts of senseless boners is really uncomfortable, or
Right.
knowing that they might bleed unexpectedly, right?
Yeah.
Can be much more challenging. And so the best thing to do for them is to let them know, for every kid, again, know way before it happens. So by 8, everybody should
Yeah.
know, like, this is what happens, the changes of the body through puberty.
Yeah.
Um, just a gift to your kid. And again, like openness, right? Like we talk about this. So if there's something weird going on with their body, you can
Right.
normalize it, because most of the time what's going on is normal. But
Yeah.
it's hard to know. And it's scary and weird. Scary and weird for us, right?
Yeah. I mean,
We
it's
remember.
scary. It's weird for me to talk about it because of the way I grew up. I mean, but it's
Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm thinking about. I haven't talked to my daughter much, or I don't at all about it actually, and I'm just trying to like process why and the different things. But I mean, in our situation, we, she has cerebral palsy and epilepsy, go to
Mm-hmm.
doctors a lot, and I remember, I mean, I don't know how old she was. We were at the doctor, and um, I, like I said, I don't remember what age, but they brought up like sterilization, which I
Oh,
never thought I was going to hear about this.
yeah.
I mean, that's not
Ouch.
something you think
Yeah.
you're going to hear.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, just still in this day and age, there's conversations like that where you, as a parent, you're not thinking about that comes up, and like, just how do you process that as a parent? How do you, I mean, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
I want to go down like the presumed competence or allow her to have the same choices and things as, my son has. It's just, for some reason, my brain puts another level of complexity to
Well,
it
she's
when it might not be there, maybe.
well, she's really vulnerable too,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Yep.
yeah, and she deserves to have the information.
Right.
And it's, there's lots of videos and all kinds of things that'd be really helpful for her to
Mhm.
see and watch, and for books to look at and that kind of thing. I don't know her cognition. Am I
Yep.
saying the right word? Like
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and there's lots of resources in the
Sure.
show notes.
Awesome.
And you're never too late.
Yeah.
You're never too late. Don't worry about that. And if you do feel too late, just tell your kid, like, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. We should have been
Right.
talking about
Yep.
this. I wasn't educating you. My bad. That is
Right.
on me. It's not their job to ask questions. That's another myth. Like when my
Right.
kid asks me, that's when they know, that's when you know they're ready. My child told me he would never ask me a question for his dad. It's great.
Right.
Really great. He
Yep.
told me later that recently he's like, yeah, that was all just to mess with you. I'm like, great, thank you. Right. Because,
Yeah.
lovely, lovely. That's what you do. That's what you do. So, and then, I mean, I get that this is like a big values thing. And I think that everybody, like I said, wants their kid to be as whole and healthy and happy as they
Yeah.
can possibly be. And giving them an opportunity to learn about this and helping them to feel good about themselves as a sexual person
Right.
and having someone that they can say, I do not understand this. Because as they get into adolescence, there's so much slang rambling
Mhm.
around. Their friends are crushing, there's relationships happening. And if your kid is, in a 13-year-old body and operates more like a 10-year-old, it's confusing,
Right.
right? And when they just don't get it because they can't read social cues or
Yeah.
whatever, it just gets more complicated. So the more information they have ahead of time, then you can say, hey,
Mhm.
what's going on with relationships and crushing? What are they talking about? Then they'll say, I don't get it. There's all this craziness going on, like peer pressure and bullying. And then you can say, thank you for telling me
Mhm.
this is what this is, and chunk it down, make it simple, and give them the information so that they can. I mean, honestly, there's a place for masking, and that's when sometimes when kids are really like getting into weird shit. Sorry, I said I wouldn't swear. Oh well,
Okay.
getting into weird conversations and uncomfortable conversations. So if your kid is coached to mask, it's going to be
Right.
safer for them and to make
Right.
noises like they know what's up, and then say, that's happening, come tell me so we can figure out a plan, right?
Yeah.
And this does require you to do some acting. but kids are kind of stupid and they might notice your vibe is a little bit off, but
Right.
really, if you're planning ahead and being a little weird, it's fine. You can just say, I'm being a little weird, I don't know what I'm doing. Here we go.
Yeah. For sure. What is one tip you can share to help listeners be more inclusive today? So just something everybody can start doing today to be more inclusive.
That's a great question. I actually love that question. I think one thing that I was thinking about is kind of like what you said, kind of at that when you were talking about, oh, I still have this judgment and stuff left over from my past in terms of like sexuality and sex. So I would say that to just turn up your radar a little bit. And so when you're having an interaction with somebody, like I know some of you are seeing my she her pronouns and you're like, what's going on there? Right? What's that about? That's inclusivity, right? I'm
Mhm.
saying I'm open to who you are, no matter who you
Right.
are. So just like I'm a lover of baby steps. So with this, just paying attention to when you're having some judgment,
Mhm.
right? I'm having some judgment here. Okay, what's this about? And what am
Mhm.
I going to do here so that I am inclusive? Like I am working on my inclusivity because it's not instant. And I love that you talked about, you're like, I do not know what's happening here with these transgender people,
Yeah.
right? And you were like, I'm working on my inclusivity, right?
Yep.
So, but yeah, baby step, just watch for it. That's it. Just watch
Mhm.
for it. You don't have to do anything but heighten your awareness, and then you'll be able to like take a moment and like, all right, what am I gonna do here? And
Right.
again, especially with neurodivergent kids and kids these days, lots more exploration of their sexuality, right? In terms of gender and
Right.
who they're attracted to and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's my tip.
That's good. I love it. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what you actually do? Like, do you coaching? Do you have
I,
any
I do,
programs or like talk
yeah.
about it?
I do all kinds of things. So I have classes regularly. Like I have one coming up right now. I don't know when this is going to go out about how to talk with neurodivergent girls about their
Okay.
periods. I have an online solutions center. It's a library of videos and information for parents of neurodivergent kids because you have special needs when it comes to these
Hmm.
conversations. I do PTA classes and speaking,
Yeah.
virtually and in person. I have written books. And I also I have a handout PDF for y'all that's 5 tips for talking with your kids, neurodivergent
Okay.
kids, and for your kids, and then 5 tips for you having the conversations. Because, like I said, I saw this opportunity, this hole, and I'm all evangelized. So I get furious when there's a kid that does something like says nice boobs and everybody goes crazy and they get kicked out
Right.
of school,
Yep.
right? So wrong. Like
Yeah.
so wrong. And so anyway, lots of different ways to learn from me. I'm on Instagram, kind of. I hate it, so I backed away from it. But I'm on Facebook. It's at Birds,
Sure.
Bees, Kids, and then on
Yep.
YouTube too. So many ways to learn from me. Many ways to learn from me. So
As you're saying about like kid gets kicked out of school for saying nice foods, I'm like most of the other people probably were thinking the same thing. They just didn't say it out loud. So why is that person getting kicked out of school?
it's so dumb. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just so close-minded, right? Can I
Yeah.
just tell one story and then we
Sure.
can be done?
Go
So
for it.
I was teaching at an autism conference, and I was teaching how to talk to autistic kids about,
Sure.
sexuality. And that was early days, so it was not talk, not communicate, right? So I'm
Hmm.
evolving, right? So how to
Yep.
communicate. And I was all done, and this lovely man came up to me and he said, I've been raising my autistic grandson from the time he was born. He's 15 now. And they've had this situation with him where he is obsessed with shoes because, special interest.
Hmm.
And he's
Sure.
obsessed with shoes and he likes to take pictures of people's shoes. And we've done a really good job of helping him understand, you have to ask for permission first and all that. So they had this whole routine down and he's doing a really good job at that. So at school, um, I don't understand why he had his phone, but whatever. He had his phone and there were some girls that he said, "Can I take pictures of your shoes?" And they said
Hmm.
yes. And then I I think he kept asking and they got uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And so they talked to the principal or whatever, the administration. The administration decided that he was sexually harassing them, which I don't have all the details, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
maybe there was something going on or the language he was using or whatever. And so, long story short, what happened? Expelled, right?
Yep.
And he did not intend harm.
Yep.
He did not intend harm. It wasn't like a neurotypical 15-year-old, like to want, can I take pictures of your shoes? Not the same, right? And so they couldn't accommodate. Again, I don't have all the details, but he was so upset, the grandfather, and they couldn't accommodate or see that he was a different child and that he had different needs. So anyway, we did some strategizing about the child
Yep.
needs a photo album, right? And
Right.
right. Anyway, so that made me crazy. And that every time I
Yeah.
hear stuff like that, it makes me crazy. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's my last story. And I'm done.
Yeah. No, it's all good.
Yeah.
Where's the best place for everybody to connect with you? Or you kind of said you're all
Um,
over. What would be the
I,
preferred way to
I
connect?
My website,
Okay.
birdsandbeesandkids.com. There's tons of stuff there. I've been doing this for a really long time. And there's tons and tons of resources. So that's the easiest spot to find me. And then you can always email me directly, amy@birdsandbeesandkids.com. If you have a question or need help, I'm happy to support you. I
Awesome.
want you to feel confident and good. I want your child to be healthy and happy. And that's my thing.
That's awesome. Ready for the last question?
Yeah.
Like spam lunch meat, yes or no?
Oh, yes.
Oh, quick.
That's it.
That's the question. I live near Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum is located. So I've been asking everybody that. Just kind of a fun pop on question
Fried.
at the end. Fried.
Fried, right.
Hmm.
Not fresh, but fried. Yes, thank you for asking. I had hot dogs for dinner last night, so I'm in.
You don't just open it up, stick a fork in, and take it out and start gnawing on it.
No, not happening. That's not going to happen. I mean, in desperation, maybe.
Have
As a
you had
dare.
it? Have you had it recently, like in the last few years?
No, no,
Like we had it like, well, within the last year, and it seems like there's a lot less of the gooey stuff on the outside of it now than there was when I remember. So I think
Mm-hmm.
they've changed something slightly.
Yeah,
I
that gooey
just
stuff,
remember there being a lot on there before.
that gloppy clear stuff,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I
yeah.
like that stuff. I like that stuff. Excellent last question. The last podcast interview I did, they asked me, who, dead or alive, would I like to have dinner with? And I'm like, I don't know.
That's interesting.
I was like, my dad? So I like spam question. It's a winner.
Awesome. Well, thank you
It's
so
a
much for
winner.
being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. And thank you for trusting me with your people. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.